Hello everyone, my name's the Zero Man and welcome to Countdown to Zero, where we look at just gaming in general, both past and present, looking at 3 good things, 3 bad things, and an overall kind of look at the entire game as a whole at the very end. Today's game is the original Monster Hunter. So no, not the PSP versions, not the Japan-only versions, not even the Wii and Wii U versions. The original PS2 version, Monster Hunter. Now, as being PS2 game and going into the future, I am emulating all of these, and just for the sake of stability, I've kind of cranked them back to how they would look as a PS2. They might even look slightly worse, though I don't think they exactly do. But until a better computer gets built in the future, which has more video hardware under the hood, it's much more stable just to record them as they originally looked rather than making them look pretty. Anyway, continuing on. Monster Hunter is a game about, well, hunting monsters. It's the entire premise of the game. And that leads into one of the best things about the game, is that every monster is unique. From the little tiny monsters that aren't a threat to you, to the big, bad, gigantic bosses you have to fight. Everything is unique. Everything fights differently. Now, that's not to say that everything doesn't have patterns or attacks that they copy from each other, but overall, monsters fight differently from one another. Even if they do look the same, they'll have different attacks, they'll have different personalities, they'll engage you in different ways. They'll be more aggressive, less aggressive, they'll be prone to running away, they'll be prone to charging head-on at you. And that's what makes continuing in Monster Hunter so much fun. It's just the fact that every monster is just so different from each other. Second thing I do love about this game is that you could pretty much play any weapon set, and any weapon set is viable. Now, that is to say there aren't some weapons that aren't more viable than others, and I'll get to that later, but for the most part, every weapon set is viable. You can go in with a longsword and knock around monsters, you can go in with a sword and shield and knock around monsters, you can go in with a club, you can go in with the heavy broadswords. You could pretty much go in with anything and you can kill the monsters if you know what you're doing and you're good enough. And I know this is going to be a minor thing, but it still counts as the third thing towards this game, no matter what. I really like how it used the second thumbstick for the PS2. Depending on what direction you hit the thumbstick, and whether you're guarding at the time, or whether you're running at the time, or just various different things happening, it will change what kind of attacks you do. So if you have your shield up, you'll make like a very short slice, just kind of a protective slice. Or if you just are kind of running, you'll do a big jump and like a stab down with your sword. It's just a lot of nuance. A lot of nuance to the combat system. You could do bigger and smaller hits depending on how you move your sword, or just how you flick the thumbstick, or if you're running, or if you're guarding, and it adds a lot more depth to the combat than you just kind of flailing away. Something I think that some of the later Monster Hunters with their like button combinations kind of have. But that's just my personal opinion on that. But there are some massive glaring issues with this game. If you do not like grinding, and no, I'm not talking about the dance move, or making flour. I'm talking about going out for hours on end just to try and get one item. If you do not like that, this game is not for you. Heck, this game... I've put in so many hours into it, and I've gotten nowhere, essentially. And sad part is, I've lost my save file since then, so that's like 40 hours down the drain, but that's besides the point. 40 hours in, and I've beaten what I would consider one major boss. One major boss and one minor boss. In a game about monster hunting. In a game where the entire premise of the game is to hunt down bosses and kill them. 40 hours is a little ridiculous just to have one. Just to have one. Which the grinding issue leads kind of into the second issue. Enemies don't drop enough resources. To put this into perspective, there's a boss called the Cephadrome. It is a giant land shark. The land shark can only be knocked out of the sand by a certain bomb. Now, the certain bomb can only be made if you farm what's called a screamer off of the mini-boss that I've beaten. Now, thing is, that mini-boss only drops one screamer per, just, like, kill. You only get one screamer per reward, which means every time you run that mission, you're only going to end up being able to make one bomb. And if you know anything about Monster Hunter, you're pretty much going to need just maxed out items going into a fight, which I think for the bombs is about 10, so you need to run that mini-boss 10 times. And every time you run it is another 15 minutes. It kind of adds up over a while. And I did promise this earlier, and I'm going to go into it now, but some weapon classes are completely unviable. If you are a newbie, any of the guns just don't touch. They cost way too much materials. And considering this game doesn't give you materials to begin with, it just becomes infinitely too hard to build up any kind of amount of ammo to actually go and take down monsters. Swords and shields are so underpowered in this game as to be completely unviable from the very start. Long swords are so underpowered due to sharpness issues that they are completely unviable from the start. Lances, I would argue, are completely unviable just because they only have one moveset. It's a stab up and a stab down. That's all they have. That's all that's in their moveset. It makes them near completely unusable in any kind of actual fight. So it leaves you with a very limited amount of weapons you can actually use, which defeats the purpose of having a whole bunch of weapon sets to begin with. Because when your best weapon sets are a massive club and a massive sword, and all the other ones are just kind of crap in comparison, it's problematic. Not to mention that there's multiple ores that are needed to make certain weapons that are only available online, which of course the online has been long since killed, unless there's private servers out there that I don't know of, but I highly doubt. So you can't even access a lot of the content in the game. In fact, there are multiple tiers of missions and bosses that you can't get to now because they're online only. So you can't see the most powerful and most deadly bosses in the game. You won't be able to build the best armors and the best weapons in the game because there is no online anymore. Which is infuriating. But I still love this game. So if you're willing to put up with the grind, like me, and if you're willing to put up with a lot of the crap that it throws out there, I would give this game a 7 out of 10, because it does the fighting really well. Each combat arena is really unique, and every boss feels like you're not fighting the same thing over and over and over again. That said, if you are someone who really doesn't like grind, I would say this is somewhere around a 3, because you will be putting up with grind, and you will be miserable. So, if you can stand the grind, I would suggest playing this game just to go into it and see the combat and see how fun it is. And if you don't enjoy the grind, just steer clear of it because it's going to drive you up the wall. So, that's it for this time, guys. Next week is going to be starting up of a special month, which you'll only know about then, So, until next time, stay beautiful.